Forget fantasy, forget kinky, forget illegal. We're going a different direction here. What's the weirdest thing a babysitter did to you? Story 1. I have a memory that caused so much mental trauma. I can't have cousin soap products anywhere near me without the smell making me retch. When I was between 4 or 5, my mom decided to take me to live in England from Northern Ireland. We had to stay with relatives for a while so my mom could work and be able to rent out our place, whilst I was in the care of an adult cousin and her 2 daughters who were almost 10 years older than me. It was very strange for me, being an undiagnosed autistic child. One day, I was watching TV by myself and heard a word I'd never heard before, unaware it was a swear word. Me, being an innocent 4 to 5-year-old, I walked up to my adult cousin as her daughters were helping her in the kitchen, and I asked her, "What does—" Okay, in my script it has just 4 asterisks. I don't know which word it is. You can probably see it in the captions. Let's all just assume it's a bad word, okay? "What does this mean?" I kid you not. That's when stuff really hit the proverbial fan. Next thing I knew, she had grabbed my wrist and started hauling me towards the upstairs bathroom, one of her daughters holding my other arm and the other pushing me upstairs from behind. My adult cousin used her body to pin me facing the bathroom sink, and her eldest daughter grabbed a bar of soap, handing it to her mom. Then she tried to push it into my mouth, but I clamped my lips and teeth shut, so her younger daughter pinched my nose until I had to take a breath through gritted teeth. The bar of soap was forcefully grated against my teeth, and when I tried to struggle, my adult cousin gave her daughter the soap, used both arms to pin my head still, and her daughter continued rubbing the soap between my lips and teeth. After perhaps 5 to 10 minutes of this, which honestly felt like hours of torture, my adult cousin stopped the soap attack, led me down the hall and into my designated bedroom. Her younger daughter pulled the duvet back, and I was legit thrown into bed. Then they covered me up, still fully dressed, left the room, and closed the door on me. I spat pieces of soap onto the duvet, just curled up and cried in absolute confusion. I was so scared by how aggressive their attack was. I was too afraid to even tell my mom what they did. I became a whole lot quieter around them after that, because I didn't want to endure that ever again, and I refused to play the Nintendo with those cousins ever since. I know now that nothing justifies what they did to me, even if I did use a swear word. I told my mom about it in my mid-20s, and she honestly didn't know what to say to that. But at least she now understands why I refuse to allow cousin soap products anywhere near me. Thankfully, I didn't have to see those cousins anymore, because we eventually moved back home to Northern Ireland when I was around 7 or 8 years old. But one of the daughters spoke to me a couple years ago just to say, whilst also laughing about it, "Oh, do you remember that time you swore and we washed your mouth out with soap? Shrew, you attacked a 5-year-old just for asking what the word meant. I'm quite certain that I won't ever forget that." There's an old saying, "The axe forgets, the tree remembers." This was totally uncalled for. Cartoons, movies, and TV shows of old like to joke about how some kid gets his mouth washed out with soap, but this is the most aggressive version of that I've ever heard of. This kid didn't know that was a bad word. They were asking what it was. They did not deserve that at all. Story 2. My time with babysitters wasn't the best. I swear they wanted to unalive me. I only had 2 babysitters in my life. One was a random teenage girl. The other was my older sister when she was old enough, as she is 8 years older than me. I don't remember the first babysitter, as I was just a baby. But my mom told me about how she ran me a bath and left me there, and I almost drowned. My mom figured this out because I guess I would freak out every time she would try and bathe me. I would leave deep scratches in her, trying to get away from the tub and the water. It took my mom around 6 months to get me to be able to be in the bath with her and not freak out. I still get scared of having to dunk my head underwater of any sort to this day, but I can deal with it better. With my sister? Oh man. She would chase me and my other older sibling, this one being 2 years older than me, with a freaking chef's knife. We had to barricade ourselves in the bathroom till our parents came home. She would also try to smother or suffocate us. Several times I had to pull her off of my older sibling as she had a pillow over their face and they couldn't escape on their own. She also used to try and drown me in our grandparents' pool during the summer. So I wouldn't go swimming unless my papa, my grandfather, would swim with me if my sister was going to swim. There are so many other things she tried, but those are the main ones she always did to my older sibling and I. The less lethal, but has given me my fear of mirrors for the rest of my life, was when she locked me in the bathroom without any lights and a singular candle. She then proceeded to yell through the door, "Bloody Mary," 3 times. It was freaking terrifying, especially after you were forced to watch a horror movie based around Bloody Mary or something similar. Yeah, my older sibling and I don't talk to her at all anymore. Did they ever tell the mom about this when they got older? If they did the mom believe them? I totally understand if they never want to talk to her for the rest of their lives. That is just scary. That's file a permanent restraining order against them scary. Story 3. I remember when my sister and I had babysitters. We had a pair of twins, Jamie and Jessie, that would switch out halfway through. We would spend half the day with one twin and then the other until our parents came home. They were complete opposites. Jamie would play with us, help us with crafts, took us to the park and the public library, and occasionally took us out for ice cream. We loved spending our time with her. Then there was Jessie. She didn't do any of that stuff. She would spend most of the time sitting on her phone and left my sister and me to our own devices. One day we were complaining that we were bored, so she took out her makeup kit and went to the bathroom. She spent maybe 10 minutes doing her makeup while we watched. Then, when my sister complained of boredom again, note, she had undiagnosed ADD at the time and she hasn't been tested even now, but I'm fairly certain she's on the spectrum. She took out an eyelash curler. She then decided to use the thing on her. Both of us were scared of this thing because at the time we must have been 6, me, and 8, and we thought this thing looked like something that would be used to take out somebody's eye. Even though my sister was crying, Jessie still persisted to use the eyelash curler on her. Seeing my sister cry and having the same thought, I then started to cry because we were both terrified. We spent the rest of the day holed up in my sister's room until my parents came home. I don't remember either of them coming over after that, so I think we told our parents and they were both fired soon after. It's a bit trippy to be treated differently by someone who, while you're young, looks exactly the same. Kind of like a real-life Jekyll and Hyde. It's a shame that both of them had to be fired because of the one. Was there no way they could get rid of Jessie and keep Jamie? Jamie sounds awesome. Jamie could have spent the whole time with them and doubled her pay, basically. Story 4. My younger brother had a babysitter around the age of me. She was 15, I was 13, my brother was 5. She often flirted with me, but because of my past experiences with my biological parents, I had very little idea what any feeling other than hate was, so I was oblivious to this. Then one day she came over and did the usual, take care of my brother, flirt with me, etc. Then, about a year later, she came over again to do the usual, but I remember my brother took a nap, and she came to my room while I was studying for my final test of the year, sat on my lap, forced me to make out with her, and started taking off my shirt. I was too shocked to do anything, but thankfully my brother came to my room and saw her. He said what happened at the dinner table later that night, and I just looked down as I thought I was in trouble. She wasn't fired and still babysat him and did more weird things to me, but eventually she moved away and it ended. In case you were wondering, my biological parents abused me severely and often wouldn't feed me for a few days. They were later arrested for child abuse and theft and haven't seen them since, and now I'm with my adopted parents and feeling way better. Story 5. The first thing I had in mind was both babysitters I consciously remember were in different unorthodox Christian variations. We called all of these Jehovah's Witnesses at the time, but I'm pretty sure for the second one it was actually something else. But it wasn't really an issue. Perhaps it even taught me that people have different beliefs and they're valid as long as they don't possess direct danger. In fact, what was messed up with the second one is that she continuously made me do tasks a bit different than I was told to before, and she absolutely knew I was super repulsive to it. I don't know why exactly, but I guess I had some behavior issues at the time. Perhaps she had similar issues herself and was uncomfortable with me doing stuff not like she imagined. It would make her as discomfortable as she made me. Story 6. Had a babysitter who would spank anyone who upset her grandson. If he was annoyed or just disliked you, he'd complain, and everyone would just get lined up and spanked. On a good day, she would make all the kids lay down on the floor and sleep every morning until it was time to take us to school. If you ever sat up quietly, she would spank or otherwise threaten you. Always wondered why she refused to watch anyone over a certain age or size, and came to figure out when my brother and I were being kicked out that it was because she could only bully young, small kids, and once they were big and strong, they wouldn't take it anymore and fought back. Some people just never stop being bullies. Oh, and she ended up going to prison on a dozen counts of child abuse and neglect at the age of like 65 to 30. Well, glad they escaped the stuff that got her thrown in jail. Lay down on the floor? At least let them lie down in their beds until they're ready for school. This story reminds me of the South Park episode with Butter's grandmother, the one that was a real bully to him, even more than his parents. Story 7. I don't think I had any bad babysitters. I had one, and she was amazing. She worked at a water park, so one time she took me to the park. I got to play on the slides all day, and at the end, she let me pick out 3 toys from the gift shop, one for me and the rest for my siblings. She played with us, and she even organized Easter egg hunts for us. She was pretty cool. Edit. I remembered I did have a terrible one. When I was a baby, my parents made sure my diaper was always clean, and I didn't sleep in the dark or quiet. I went to this daycare babysitting place. Apparently, they locked us in a pitch-black room that was silent to sleep. And also, they wouldn't change my diaper immediately, so obviously I cried. When my parents came to pick me up, they found nail marks and red scratches down my back. Story 8. During most of my childhood, I had a new babysitter every month or so until my parents let me stay home alone before I was even 10. Apparently, I was a little troublemaker, which I find it hard to believe since I was the shy and quiet kid at school. Luckily, the only weird thing that ever happened was when I caught one stealing. I was just minding my business around the house when I found her at my parents' bedroom rummaging through the wardrobe drawers. I didn't even suspect anything and just asked her what she was doing, which she gave some dismissive answer, and I bought it. Later, I overheard my parents discussing about some missing money, and I told her what happened with the most innocent face ever. I don't remember what happened to her, but in the end, we got our money back. Story 9. One of my old housekeepers used to babysit. When I was about 4 or 5, I got out of bed to get a glass of water, and she was in our living room watching TV. I was not a restless kid and usually slept through the night, but instead of helping me and sending me back to bed, she brought me into my dad's garage to put me in the corner. The garage's floor was covered in metal shrapnel and the occasional cockroach, and I was barefoot. I was in that corner till my parents got home much later that night. I later found out that this woman never liked me, and she favored my younger brother to me. Thankfully, my parents fired her after a series of unprofessional behavior, like drinking my parents' alcohol, eating all my dad's birthday cake, and not doing her job. Eating all the cake. Was the babysitter planning on them not noticing? How do you justify that? How did they find out? Did the parent initially think the kid ate the cake? I wonder how that whole situation evolved. Story 10. Even friends of the family can be bad babysitters. My mom often left us with people that we considered family, but a couple of them were not very nice. Still, the worst babysitters I had were the couple that would walk around naked and often didn't pay attention to what I was doing. I escaped their house one time, ran all the way back to mine, and climbed up on my dad's motorcycle. Fortunately, my mom came home from work, and after she obviously got scared that I had gone missing from the babysitter, she drove to our house and found me there. I asked my mom if she gave them an earful about it, and she says that was the last time she had them watch me, and ended up quitting her job.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 12. My uncle would put my brother and me in weird places. One time it was the laundry room locked with a glass of water and a flashlight each. Another time it was the washer and dryer. Same thing with the flashlight and water. We would always do our best to escape or go back to annoying him. Whether it was jumping out of windows and knocking on the front door, climbing as high up trees as we could to try and fold them over like a slingshot in the cartoons, playing in Grandpa's shop, which was a hell no, or running up to the neighbors a mile away because they had a Super Nintendo. I honestly can't understand why he attempted to corral us somehow, especially in the winter. Story 13. I don't remember this since I was a baby at the time, but my mom told me that a dark spot in my left thigh was actually a scar that a housemaid, technically not babysitter, but she still took care of me apparently, was angry that my mom scolded her for something she did wrong. So of course, the rational and mature thing to do was to stab a baby's thigh with her fingernail in retaliation. She was promptly screamed at and fired. 22 years later, and just checking my thigh as I remembered this to write this story, and the dark spot is still there. Much lighter than it used to be, but still there. I have no scarring now, only a fingernail-shaped spot of darker skin. Story 14. Had 2 babysitters when I was younger. They were both female and siblings, one older than the other. I was first left with the older babysitter when I was 3. I think she was really kind and always took care of me, even though every time my mom left me with her, I would cry for the first few minutes. But afterwards, it was just fun, and she was really kind. My second babysitter I got when I was 6, and she was my babysitter until I was 8. She was younger, also really kind, and always took good care of me. And we would watch movies and stuff, and she'd let me play with their new dog that they got. And overall, they were great and kind people. And I'm grateful that I don't have any of these people babysitting me. Story 15. I was violated by my babysitter's husband. He had 3 kids with that woman and often babysat multiple kids at a time, but they never stuck around for long. Anyways, I told my mom one morning before school because I was too afraid to say anything before. Something in me just broke that morning, and I just started bawling my eyes out. After I told my mom, she confronted the babysitter, and the babysitter denied that her husband was capable of anything like that. She said that multiple kids had said the same thing before, and it was a lie. She also said that I had seduced him. I was only 7. I hope her children never went through the same thing, and I hope karma comes back and gets him. Story 16. My friend and I were once talking about kids and babysitters, and she said something like, "Ugh, I hate babysitters who scold you for everything and watch you while you're going to the bathroom." And I was like, I mean, if the kid is still potty training, then I can see why a babysitter would keep an eye on them. And she says, "But what if the kid is already 6 and is perfectly capable of using the bathroom by themselves?" And I go, "Is this personal experience?" And she says, "Yeah, this old lady used to watch me when I was little, and she's always yelled at me for everything and watches me in the bathroom." And I said, "Yeah, she's a weirdo." Story 17. I was being babysat by my older brother and didn't like what he'd made for dinner. I remember that he was really ticked off about this, and he called my parents. They told him to send me to my room and lock it from the outside. I had a padlock on my door for some other stuff. Not the safest household, not gonna lie. He tried to send me to my room, but I, being 5 or 6, didn't want to go and threw a fit. He picked me up and threw me over his shoulder, then literally threw me into my room on the floor. Mind you, I was about 3 foot at the time, and he's 6'7". I was the one who got in trouble thanks to autistic textural discomfort. Story 18. I didn't know so many parents were paranoid about male babysitters. When I was a teenage boy, I was frequently asked to sit for my parents' friends. It was always a blast. I'd play wrestle with them, play zombies, where I'd give them Nerf guns and they'd shoot at me while I was pretending to be a zombie. I'd blow raspberries on them if I caught them in order to eat them. I'd pick them up and carry them around. The only real difference between teenage boy babysitters and teenage girl babysitters is teenage boys will give kids lots of hyper rough and tumble play. Story 19. I asked my mom if I ever had a bad babysitter. She told me that one time she came home to country music blaring loudly on the speakers, and the babysitter was upstairs vacuuming. My mother stood there wondering where her baby was and looked down to see me on the floor next to the speakers that were playing loud music on one side of my head. My mother was not happy about the situation, so she found a better one. As a side note, my mother said I couldn't crawl yet. I was just laid there and was looking uncomfortable. Story 20. Back when I was 9, I had a female babysitter that turned out to be a real sicko. Weeks after being told she isn't allowed to babysit me and my 5-year-old sisters anymore, and after an incompetent bus driver dropped me off at the wrong address coming back from school, the chick tried to kidnap me as I was walking to my cousin's house, which was right by where I got dropped off, as well as that place being my old address. Luckily, one of my uncles caught her in the act and beat the dog dump out of her for that. She got locked up afterwards. My uncle, thankfully, didn't. Story 21. I once had a babysitter who would make my brother do things to her. My brother was 5 and I was 7, so he had no idea what he was doing. One day, my babysitter pulled me into the bathroom and made me do the same things she made my brother do to her. This same stuff continued for weeks. Soon after my parents found out, they were really mad at the babysitter, but not me and my brother because we had no idea what we were doing. So that's why me and my bro only stay with our grandparents. Story 22. I had a male babysitter when I was a kid. He was the captain of the high school football team, and he would always say he'd let me and my sister stay up an extra hour and a half and eat some junk food if me and my sister could score 3 touchdowns against him. He made this deal every time he watched us, and we always lost. But one day, we actually beat him at our half-baked football game. And true to his word, he let us stay up, and we ate popcorn and frozen pizza. Story 23. I used to have a babysitter who would most of the time bring her children, a son and daughter, and we would play board games. While I had this other babysitter who would make me stay asleep until about 4:20 p.m., then when they did let me wake up, they would ignore me, and I was about 5 or 6 then. They also barely let me eat anything, and I didn't talk that much to them. So basically, they forced me to sleep, barely fed me, and ignored me every time I spoke. Story 24. When I was 9 or 10, I had a babysitter who asked me if I already had hard-ons. I didn't know what that was, so I said no, and she was kind of surprised, and she didn't say anything else after that. I never said anything about it after that, but she stopped babysitting me after that day. 2 years later, I realized what she asked me after my dad explained what that was. I still haven't said anything about it to anyone close to me. Story 25. Not a babysitter, but a daycare worker who touched me and forced me to touch him. Reported him, and he got added to the S-offender registry. And 15 years, I think. Happened when I was 4. Mom quit her job and became stay-at-home immediately. Story 26. I had a babysitter who just did homework and sat upstairs in the living room, and us kids just stayed in our room playing games. And she just made us some food, and we went back downstairs to play even more games.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.